Hello everyone and welcome to this video, which is in our Great Engine Game series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler, and in this video we're having a look at something slightly different. It's not from the TCC, it's not from the CCC, it's actually from the games that I run on my hardware when I'm testing out stuff. It's a game between Stockfish and Komodo Dragon 3.3, and I ran it whilst preparing a video on a new idea in the semi-Slav, one of Crazy Leela's ideas, which I tried out in Lichess Blitz, and well, that went pretty well for me. And this game is from there, and it was such a good game. I didn't really want to just throw it out there. I wanted to analyze it properly, and well, I've finally done that, and now I want to share it with you. It is an absolute stunner. So let me show you how it went, and you can marvel at it as well, just as much as I have. So, the semi-Slav, Mr. Beads' favourite. Knight c3, knight f6, knight f3. And Leela's idea was specifically against the 4a6 system, but as you can see, it could transpose from even just a normal semi-Slav with 4e6. Now with a6, black is actually intending to take on c4 and play b5 and support that pawn, so try and win that c4 pawn. And of course, by playing the pawn to a6 early, well, you're getting that support of the b5 pawn in early, so if white tries to undermine it, you're already ready. Well, Leela calls black's bluff and plays the move bishop f4. And the idea of bishop f4, get the bishop outside the pawn chain. You want to go e2, e3 next if black doesn't react, and then you've got the ideal structure in a queen's gambit opening. Yeah? So the bishop outside the pawn chain, the dark squared bishop, and then e3 to protect the c4 pawn. So black grabs that c4 pawn. Leela plays e4, and black plays b5. So this is a pretty typical state of affairs in the real sharp semi-Slav systems. Black grabs the c4 pawn, hangs on to it with b5 for dear life, and well, white's got a double pawn center, but well, needs to find a way to develop. And what Leela came up with, and what I played a lot in Blitz, was a very interesting idea. It turns it into some sort of gambit Catalan, because it puts the bishop on the long diagonal like that. Now, you know, in some ways you can say, well, that's not really helping a kingside attack. You know, the bishop isn't pointing towards this side. But supporting the centre, it gives white all sorts of stuff, like, for example, d5 breaks, when the bishop's diagonal can be opened like that. So, yeah, it's quite dangerous. It also helps dissuade black a little from playing the move c6 to c5, because this bishop is always lurking on the long diagonal. So, some standard moves after castles, bishop e7, rook e1. This was all Leela's original line. Castles h4, just following what Leela had suggested in its main line. Knight bd7, and now the thing that really surprised me, because and this was a thing that really made me think, okay, well, you know, let's give this one a go. Leela wanted to play e5, so pretty committal, you know, just weakening that double pawn center, giving black the d5 square for the knight, and then knight g5. And well, Leela's idea was if white plays h6 in this position, I showed an awful lot of games in my video there. Leela wanted to take on d5, just fossilize that pawn structure, and you know, sort of trap the black pieces behind it, and then play the knight to h3, and then start attacking in all sorts of creative ways. It's really, yeah. It maybe doesn't look that much, but well, just have a look at the video and you see how much fun I had. I scored very, very heavily with it once I'd really got to understand the whole breadth of Leela's ideas. There was another possibility, however. Black could play the move knight takes f4 here. G takes f4. So you give up the knight on that nice square and you make it harder for yourself to play c6 to c5, both because the diagonal is open and also because, you know, white could very easily reply d5. But on the other hand, you know, doubling some pawns, and well, what the idea was here was that white plays the move queen g4, black plays h5, queen g3, and now bishop takes g5. And after h takes g5, well, interesting to have a look at this position. You know, the point is, well, you know, Black doesn't have the two bishops anymore. That's great. And white's got some great looking outposts there on f6 and d6 for this knight in particular. However, what's less good about it is that, the pawns are kind of locked somehow. You don't really have a very easy way of opening up that black king side anymore. So in some ways, all this aggression has made the black king safe because you don't have any real pawn breaks anymore. Well, there's f5, but I mean, that's just giving away a pawn, right? I mean, and you're already one pawn down. So yeah, it's not particularly clear how you're breaking through. So what sort of plan would white have in this position? Not so easy, not so clear. And that's the scenario that we step into. Stockfish against Dragon 3.3. Let's see what Stockfish made of it. Dragon played the move King G7, which is pretty natural. It's a sort of a waiting move. Long term, you might go a Rook B8 or a Queen C7 to play C5. But here, you're just anticipating a Knight E4 to F6. It's not going to arrive with check anymore. And you're waiting to see what white will do. White's got a few ideas. Rook D1, very natural. But Stockfish played the move Knight E4 here. Pretty obvious, aiming for D6 and F6. But here, Komodo made use of the fact that it had gone King G7, no discovered attacks there, and played the move C5. Now, what is Black's idea here? Well, Black's got a huge idea here, and that's to take this knight on E4. Basically, if Black can take this knight on E4, then Black's got no problems at all. So, for example, if I were to go D takes C5, the engines were just saying takes, knight takes c5, give up that exchange, queen takes a8. Black has got one pawn for the exchange, but a great outpost on d3. King's completely safe because there's no real pawn breaks there anymore. Actually, the engines were winning lots of these positions as Black. Torch was beating Stockfish as Black. So I mean, that's pretty good indication that that this is really, really good. So what are you going to do here? Well, Stockfish had, the first idea that made me say, what? It played the move D5. D5. What is the idea? Well, the first obvious idea is that if you take with a pawn on D5, I'll go knight D6, which is really unpleasant. Because I'm hitting this guy on there, and I'm also threatening moves like f5 or e6. The fact that I've grabbed a pawn away from protecting the f5 square means that the f5 break is pretty dangerous. And the engines were already saying this is winning for white. It's that good. So that's not great. But can't Black just play the move bishop takes d5? Well, that's true. But now white's playing the move knight f6 in this position. By the way, Torch pointed out that f5 is also very interesting for white, but that's another story. Loads of complicated games with that as well. This is all. I'll put the PGN up on Lichess since it's a crazy Leela idea, so you can have a look. Torch finding loads of very interesting lines, very interesting engine to analyse with. But Stockfish played the move knight f6. Why are you playing d5 and then knight f6? Well, I mean, I guess the point was that, if you played knight f6 immediately, Black would go c takes d4. And actually, it helps very much to keep the d file closed, right? You'll play d4 to d3 at some stage. We'll take on g2 first, and then afterwards take on d4. And then you'll be able to play d3 and keep the d file closed. Yeah, it's not going to be very easy for white at all. So with d5, since Black's forced to play bishop takes d5, now we go knight f6. We've given away a pawn, but we've got the open d file, and that's going to help cause some danger. Now, Komodo Dragon played really ambitiously here. Bishop takes g2 was kind of what I was expecting, and this was one of the things that Torch was choosing. King g2, knight takes f6. Gf6, king h7, something like that. You could also play another move that Torch was playing, queen c7, rook d1, rook d8, and try and keep it together there. Now, I mean, in this position, f5 is happening. It was getting really sharp here. Rook b8, knight, rook d6. hoping somehow to get e takes d6 with a passed d pawn and also the e5 square for the white queen there. Actually, this was turning out to be quite a thrilling little draw by repetition. Rook takes h5, threatening rook h7 checkmate, and after takes, king g8, knight f6 check. This was ending up in a draw by repetition. King g7, knight h5, knight f6, king g7. So bishop takes g2, definitely possible. But Komodo played very, very aggressively here, played the move knight b6. So keeping the pieces on and just sort of saying, well, all this stuff that white's doing on the king side, black king's perfectly safe. If anything threatens to take on h5, I can just play rook h8. What's the problem? So, yeah, I was sort of expecting rook d1, and that's possible too. But Stockfish played the move f5. Wow, what a break. It looked impossible, but it is actually pretty possible. What's happening here? Well, if you take with the pawn on f5, that's very simple. I just take. And after takes, rook d1, you're losing this knight. So that's absolutely gone. If you go g takes f5, I go check, king h7, and then knight f4. And now I'm looking for the move g6. This is rather dangerous for black. It's not hopelessly lost, but it is very, very dangerous indeed. So the engines certainly don't want anything to do with that. I mean, I was thinking about bishop g2, but after queen takes g2, amazingly enough, the engines are saying this is plus 2.11. It's hard to believe, but stuff like e takes f5 is met by e6. I'm threatening e7. And after f takes e6, I'm going rook d1. Now, if I do something like queen e7, then queen c6 is really unpleasant, hitting everything. The knight moves away, rook d7 is coming in. So you go queen c7, I go rook takes e6, rook d8, rook e1, knight c8, and then knight d5. And I'm looking for stuff like the knight eventually coming to f4 and attacking g6. It's just really, it's just really very, very difficult for black. I mean, with a knight on d5 here, I've also got a threat of rook e7 check, picking up the queen. So e takes f5, amazingly enough, very, very dangerous there because just of e6. And, well, knight d5 is possible. We go rook d1. And then, yeah, this is one of those things kind of hard to assess. Why is this so good for white? Well, simply the king's sort of caught in a bit of a cage there. Big past f pawn, and after something like queen c8, we go e6 takes, and then just queen e5 was what the engines were looking at, and we're just looking to go rook d6, and we'll either go rook e6 to e7 later, or rook d1 and invade. I mean, for me, this looks like superb compensation for white. For the engines, it's just completely winning. But yeah, those sort of positions, very hard to assess for a human player, I can tell you, because you're just not sure. You can't tell from a distance it's that good. But the engines just don't see any possibility for the black pieces to get free. Well, Komodo Dragon just kept it tight at the back, sort of said, well, what are you doing? After all, if you take on here or here, I'll just take back with the pawn. Easy, nothing wrong. And what black is doing, pinning the e pawn to the queen, so that if ever something like if ever this e pawn moves from e6, then e6 won't be dangerous because we'll just swap off the queens. Not stupid. Rook d1 was played, and now this was the real big mistake. Yeah, I mean, what Torch always wanted, it wanted to play the move rook h8 in these positions. So rook d1, rook h8. And the idea of that is to really shore up the king side, to shore up that h5 pawn. Why on earth would that be interesting? Well, you will see in the game why it's interesting to shore up the h5 pawn. I certainly hadn't seen it coming. What Komodo did was slightly weird. In actual fact, Komodo played the move rook a e8. Quite a sophisticated move, really. The idea, of course, is that it wants to be ready for any future advance of the e pawn. And Komodo just says, well, if knight e8, rook e8, f6, king h7, black's got no problems here. Very solid. 2 pawns for the exchange. You're not going to break through, and I'm going to just start moving my queen side. Yeah, quite a sophisticated judgment there, just willing to give back material for that super knight on f6. But this is where the fireworks really start, because Stockfish wasn't interested in taking back the exchange. Stockfish was interested in giving up material. Yeah, this could be an absolutely fantastic tactical test for you, but if you find it, well, I'm pretty impressed, I have to say. Every move here, I mean, f5 came as a surprise. Every move from now on was just a total shock for me. Knight takes h5 check. G takes h5, and now f6 check. So what is the idea here? Well, I mean, the key thing is, of course, is that the black's position is kind of cut in half here. So, I mean, if you played a move like king g8, for example, well, I go queen h4 or queen h2, and I'm just going to take here, and you're so cut in half somehow, there's nothing much that you can do. But the key point is about it, well, why doesn't black play something like king g6? Okay, the king's a little bit exposed, but how are you getting at my king? I mean, all of these squares, these squares on this diagonal are all covered, and the king's totally safe, right? And then we'll just get our pieces together, and then eventually get back, and we'll be fine. Maybe play the rook on h8, bring the king back h7, g8, something like that. I mean, how on earth are you getting at the black king? What was Stockfish's solution? Give up some more material. Rook takes d5. Now, okay. If knight takes d5, then bishop e4 is checkmate, right? I mean, that's clear. But we go e takes d5 here. And I mean, how are you getting at this black king? I mean, I understand it looks exposed, but again, all of these squares, they're all covered. How on earth I mean, how are you going to stop me from getting out? And I mean, if I move my queen away to try and give a check, then you just take this one, right? This pawn's unprotected. It's going to take you ages. Well, Stockfish's idea is f4. So it's just sacrificed a whole rook, and now it's just consolidating with this really very visual triangle structure. So what is White's idea now? Well, White's idea is incredibly clever. Actually, if you just give White lots and lots of time, White's just going to play the move bishop h3 and then play f5 check. And when the king goes back, well, then we're going to come in with queen h4 or with g6. So that's the idea. So what on earth can black do against that? Well, the more you start to look, the tougher you realize it is, because I mean, that structure, that white central structure with the pawns on f4, e5, and this whole diamond structure here is so solid that yeah, black's really got no way to counter it. Knight c8 is one possibility, but we go bishop h3, knight e7. This was one possibility, but we go f5 and we go f6 and we go bishop f5 and we go g6 and we just break through like this, and black's got nothing that he can do. So Komodo Dragon played the move rook g8, and you're just basically trying to anticipate a future advance of this g pawn and try and give the king some sort of safety here. Well, Stockfish continued with the move f5 check. So obviously, if you go king h7, I go queen h4, and this is pretty horrible. I'm threatening queen takes h5 checkmate. Rook h8, we're going e6 here. King g8, and now g6. What a pawn structure! What a pawn structure! Look at that. Takes, and well, you can imagine that this is not going to end well for black. Incredible pawn structure. But of course, after f5, we're just giving up the pawn, right? King takes f5, and how do you catch the king? I mean, black's actually threatening rook takes g5. I can do a bishop h3 check, but then the king just moves back and then moves back afterwards. I mean, what am I doing here? Well, you might want to stop the video here and see what you can do, because there's a way to catch the king. and that was Stockfish's g6 in this position. And what's the idea? Well, you're threatening bishop h3 checkmate here. The amazing thing is that, you can say, but I've got rook g6, right? I mean, if bishop h3, there's just rook g4. What are you talking about? Well, it's slightly cleverer than that, and there's a big detail in this position that by now you need to have spotted, and that is that the queen on c7 is undefended. So what does white do? White plays rook f1 check, king e6, bishop h3 check, no way for the king to retreat, rook g4, we take. Black's only got one move, king e5, and now queen f4 check. And that is the essence of the whole tactical operation, that the queen on c7 is undefended and you catch it. The queen was defended, none of this would work. So rook takes e5 was played by the engine. Now it's another one that's easy to miss. You say, oh my goodness, actually it's, rook, queen and king, it's protected, and you're also escaping with king f6. What's happening? Well, we just catch the king in another way here. We go the move bishop h3 check, stopping the king from coming back to e6. King takes f6, and then rook f1 check. Now, obviously, if you go king g7, I've got g takes f7 check, and then this is going to be rather nasty. So king goes to e7, and then we've got rook takes f7 check. King d6, and now you can do it in various ways. Stockfish gave a check, extra repetition, just to show Russian style, and then rook takes c7. And of course, king takes c7 allows queen takes c5 check. Now, Komodo tried a few little disruptive thingies, king f2, but yeah, at the end of the day, you've just got no way of doing anything with the white queen, no way to exploit the fact that they're on the same square. And after king c7, well, Stockfish didn't even take this one, could have done, but played queen f7, forcing the king to the back, queen g6, and then we're even hitting this pawn on a6 afterwards. So knight d7 was played, queen g8 check. Black didn't want to allow this pin, so played rook e8, and after queen d5 it had another pin on there, and well, the game continued for some while, but obviously Stockfish had no trouble converting this a queen for a rook up. Wasn't that amazing? This is the type of game that's my answer to people when they say, but why do you run all these engine games? What would you possibly find out in them? This sort of stuff, that's what you find out. I have to say, all of these moves at some stage came as an incredible surprise to me. I mean, this idea of d5 was incredible. Simply, you just give up a pawn just to keep the d file open. Just give away a pawn just like that, just dynamics, right? And I mean, the whole judgment, that despite being 2 pawns down, that having, a pawn on f6 after knight takes f6 and control of the d file is enough, that's pretty impressive. But, these sort of follow-ups, this f5, was amazing. And the point was, I didn't really see the idea, I mean, playing through the game the first time, you're sort of thinking, yeah, okay, this looks dangerous, but, am I really attacking with so much? But then this move, knight h5, and then this whole follow-up, takes, and then this quiet move f4, just consolidating that and saying, okay, I'm going to catch your king in a couple of moves. What can you do? But then of course, this extra follow-up, this lovely blocking sacrifice, and all those subtle points, at every stage you're saying, but that doesn't work. But the whole point is that the queen on c7 is hanging in so many lines. After a few checks, there's going to be a skewer like that. Just absolutely amazing. It's really quite incredible lines there, and yeah, real pleasure to see that. And again, these sort of games, I always say it, evocative engine games that you run in your own opening lines, they really help you remember your engine lines so much better than just some 0.15 evaluation somewhere. Here you really get the feeling that this is how you attack. I can play this line. Which you wouldn't get with just, a plain line with a small, with just some random evaluation. So there we are. I hope you just enjoyed that. Just an extra little treat. Nobody else has ever seen this. You won't see it anywhere else, only on this channel. So, yeah, I hope that you like it, and I hope that inspires you to play this Leela idea. I mean, I've scored enormously with it in Blitz. So there we are. you enjoy that? Plenty more to come. All sorts of stuff from all sorts of tournaments and openings and famous players and everything. So keep your eyes peeled. Stay on this channel. Give likes and subscribe. Tell your friends, and hope to see you at the next videos. Thanks for watching.